The military transport ship was cold and empty. Kong Doan sat alone in the cargo hold, his armor making soft sounds whenever the ship shook. He was reading his orders for the third time, trying to understand why they had chosen him for this mission. The orders were simple. He would serve as a ceremonial guard for Princess Alira of the Valari Empire. He would represent humanity on her diplomatic vessel. He would show the galaxy that humans could be trusted as allies. Doan was 34 years old. He had fought in the HFY War for 6 years. He had watched friends die in dark tunnels on planets whose names he could not pronounce. He had killed so many enemies that he had stopped counting after the first 1,000. And now, they wanted him to stand quietly beside an alien. Princess and look impressive. He folded the orders and put them in his pocket. A job was a job. He had stopped questioning orders a long time ago. The transport ship docked with the Celestine Dawn 3 hours later. Doan stood up, checked his armor one final time, and walked toward the airlock. His reflection stared back at him from the metal walls. He looked tired. He always looked tired these days. The airlock opened, and Doan stepped onto the Valari flagship. The first thing he noticed was how tall everything was. The ceilings rose far above his head, designed for beings much larger than humans. The walls were made of some kind of crystal that glowed with soft blue light. Everything looked ancient and beautiful, like a museum that people actually lived in. The second thing he noticed was how the Valari looked at him. 2 guards stood waiting at the airlock. They were tall, perhaps 7 feet, with silver skin that seemed to shine from within. Their eyes were large and purple, and their faces showed no warmth at all. They looked at Doan. It's the way someone might look at a stray animal that had wandered into their home. One of them spoke in the common galactic language. His voice was musical but cold. "You are the human attach." It was not a question. Doan nodded anyway. "Sergeant Kong Duhan, reporting for duty." The guards exchanged a look. One of them made a small sound that might have been a laugh. "Follow us. The princess will receive you now." They walked through corridors that seemed to go on forever. Doan saw other Valari as they passed. Some stopped to stare at him. Others whispered to each other behind their hands. A few simply turned away, as if looking at him was beneath them. Duhun kept his eyes forward and his face empty. He had experienced worse. They reached a large chamber filled with light. Dozens of Valari stood in groups, talking softly, their silver skin making the room seem like it was full of stars. At the far end, on a raised platform, sat Princess Alira. She was younger than Doan had expected. 19 years old, according to his briefing, though the Valari aged differently than humans. She was beautiful in the way that all Valari were beautiful, with high cheekbones and eyes like purple gems. But there was something sharp in her face, something proud and cold. She was surrounded by attendants who hung on her every word. When Doan entered the room, she barely glanced at him. The guards stopped. Doan walked forward alone until he stood before the platform. He bowed deeply, as the diplomatic briefing had instructed him. "Your Highness," he said. "Sergeant Kang Doan, assigned as your human ceremonial attach. I am honored to serve." Princess Alira looked at him for a long moment. Her eyes moved over his armor, his face, his human body that was so much smaller and shorter than everyone else in the room. Then she turned to her attendants and said something in the Valari language. Doan's translator, hidden in his ear, picked up her words and converted them to human speech with a small delay. "They sent us a pet in armor," the princess said. The attendants laughed. It was a gentle sound, like wind chimes, but there was cruelty underneath it. Duhan did not react. He stood perfectly still, his bow complete, waiting to be acknowledged. The princess waved her hand without looking at him. "You may stand by the door, human. Try not to touch anything." More laughter from the attendants. Doan straightened, nodded once, and walked to the position she had indicated. He stood with his back to the wall, his hands clasped behind him, and began his watch. Hours passed. The Valari talked and laughed and conducted their business. No one spoke to Doan. No one offered him food or water when refreshments were served. No one acknowledged that he existed at all. He stood motionless, watching everything and saying nothing. Near the end of the day, An older Valari approached the princess. Doan's briefing had identified him as High Minister Orvin, the princess's uncle and chief advisor. He was taller than most Valari. With lines on his silver face that suggested great age, Orvin leaned close to his niece and spoke quietly. Doan's translator caught the words, "You should be careful with the human, Elira. They are not what they appear to be." The princess laughed. "What should I be careful of, uncle? He is barely taller than my waist. His species lives for less than a century. They only joined galactic society 60 years ago. What could he possibly do to concern me?" Orvin's face was serious. "I have read the reports from the HFY War. The humans did things that the humans got lucky," Elira interrupted. "They found a war that suited their violent nature, and they won through sheer brutality. That does not impress me, uncle. Savages can be useful, but they are still savages." Orvin looked like he wanted to say more, but the princess had already turned away to speak with someone else. The old minister glanced toward Doan. Their eyes met for just a moment. Orvin's expression was troubled, almost apologetic. Then he looked away and walked out of the chamber. Doan remained at his post. 12 hours after he had arrived, a guard finally came to dismiss him. He was shown to a small storage room that had been converted into quarters. There was no bed, only some blankets on the floor. No window. No decoration. Doan removed his armor carefully, piece by piece, and set it against the wall. He lay down on the blankets and stared at the ceiling. He thought about the princess's words. Pet in armor. Savage. He thought about the laughter of her attendants. He thought about the way everyone on this ship looked at him like he was something unpleasant they had stepped in. He closed his eyes. He had survived the Kethra trenches. He had held dying friends in his arms and kept fighting. He had walked through horrors that would break most beings in the galaxy. He could survive this too. He slept and dreamed of nothing at all. 3 weeks passed on the Celestine Dawn, and each day was worse than the one before. Princess Elira had discovered a new form of entertainment. She enjoyed testing the human, pushing him to see how far he would bend before he broke. It started small and grew larger with every passing day. On the 4th day, she ordered Doan to stand in the corner of her reception hall with his arms raised above his head. She said it was a traditional pose of respect in Valari culture. It was not. But Dohan did not know this, and he held the position for 8 hours until his shoulders burned and his arms went numb. The attendants watched him, struggled to keep his arms up. They whispered and giggled behind their hands. On the 7th day, the princess hosted a dinner for visiting diplomats. Doan stood guard by the door while servants brought dish after dish of exotic foods. The smell filled the room and made his stomach ache. He had not eaten since the morning. The princess noticed him looking at the food. She smiled sweetly and turned to her guests. "Humans eat such simple things," she said loudly. "Grain and meat and plants, like livestock. I would offer him something, but I fear our refined cuisine would upset his primitive stomach." The diplomats laughed politely. Doan's face remained empty. He stood guard until the dinner ended 6 hours later, then returned to his storage room and ate the ration bars he had brought from the human transport. On the 12th day, Commander Thiessen decided to join the entertainment. Thiessen was the head of the Valari, Royal Guard. He was old for a Valari. Nearly 800 years, and he had spent most of those years looking down on other species. He approached Dohan during a quiet moment in the corridor. Human Thiessen said, "I have been wondering something." Doan turned to face him. "Yes, Commander. Your species lives for such a short time. 80 years? Perhaps 90 if you are lucky. That is nothing. I have uniforms older than your entire civilization." Thiessen leaned closer. "So tell me, why do you bother with military service? Why spend your brief existence fighting and dying? Why not simply enjoy whatever small pleasures your limited minds can understand?" Doan considered the question. "Because some things are worth fighting for, Commander. Regardless of how long we live," Thiessen laughed. "Worth fighting for? What could possibly be worth dying for when you have so little time to begin with? You humans are strange creatures. You run toward death like it is a prize to be won." "Perhaps," Doan said quietly. Or perhaps we simply understand death better than those who think they will live forever. Theson's smile faded. He looked at Doan with something that might have been curiosity or might have been disgust. Then he walked away without another word. The days continued to pass. The mockery continued to grow. Princess Alira ordered Doan to stand outside her chambers during the night shift. Even though there were already 4 Valari guards assigned to that duty, she wanted him visible at all hours, a constant reminder of humanity's inferior position. She forgot to dismiss him during her private meetings, forcing him to stand for 20 hours without rest. She made comments about human smell, human stupidity, human ugliness. She asked her advisors whether humans could be trained like domestic animals. Through it all, Doan remained silent. He performed every duty without complaint. He never showed anger, never showed pain, never showed anything at all. This made the princess furious. One evening, after a particularly long day of diplomatic functions, Alira cornered him in an empty corridor. Her purple eyes were bright with frustration. "Does nothing bother you, human?" she demanded. "Do you have no pride at all? I have treated you like dirt beneath my feet, and you simply stand there like a statue. Are you even alive inside that armor?" Doan looked at her calmly. "I am alive, Your Highness. Then why do you not react? Why do you not complain or fight back, or at least show some sign that my words affect you? It is infuriating. It is like mocking a wall." "I have pride, Your Highness," Doan said quietly. "I simply choose where to spend it." Lyra stared at him. Her hands clenched into fists at her sides. For a moment, she looked like she wanted to hit him. But striking a diplomatic attach would cause problems even she could not ignore. "You are the strangest creature I've ever met," she said finally. "And I do not mean that as a compliment." She walked away, her silver robes flowing behind her like water. Duhan returned to his post. That night, something unexpected happened. Doan was standing guard in a quiet section of the ship when a young Valari approached him. She was small for her species, barely 6 feet tall, with nervous eyes and quick movements. She wore the simple clothes of a servant. "Human," she whispered. "I brought you something." She held out a container of water and a package of food. Real food, not the simple rations Doan had been surviving on. He looked at her with surprise. "Why?" "Because what they are doing to you is wrong." The young Valari glanced around nervously. "My name is Nahan. I chose that name myself, from a human language. I have always found humans interesting, despite what everyone says." She pushed the food and water into his hands. "The crew whispers about you," Neon continued. "They say you must be broken inside. They say no creature with a soul could endure what you endure without reacting. But I do not think you are broken. I think you are something else entirely." Doan accepted the gifts. "Thank you, Neon. This is very kind. You do not have to thank me. Just ... survive. I want to see what happens when they finally realize what you are." Disappeared into the shadows before he could ask what she meant. Duhan ate the food slowly, savoring every bite. It was the first kindness anyone had shown him in 3 weeks. He thought about Nehan's words. What did she think he was? What did she expect to happen? He did not have answers. He only had his duty and his silence and the armor that grew heavier every day. Somewhere in the back of his mind, he knew that things would eventually change. They always did. The universe had taught him that peace was temporary, and pain was always waiting around the corner. He did not know that the change was coming sooner than he expected, and when it came, it would change everything. The attack came without warning. Doan was standing guard outside the princess's reception hall when the first explosion shook the ship. The lights flickered. Alarms began screaming. The beautiful crystal walls cracked and groaned under sudden pressure. He knew immediately what was happening. He had heard these sounds before, felt this chaos before. Borders. Someone was cutting their way onto the Celestine Dawn. His hand went to his sidearm as he moved toward the reception hall doors. Inside, he could hear screaming and confusion. The Valari were panicking, their voices high and sharp with fear. A second explosion. Closer this time. The floor shook so hard that Doan had to brace himself against the wall. Then he heard the sound that haunted his nightmares. A chittering, clicking noise that echoed through the corridors. A sound like thousands of insects crawling over metal Keth. The Kethra were insectoid creatures, all sharp edges and hunger. They had almost wiped out 3 civilizations before humanity joined the war against them. They killed for sport, kidnapped for ransom, and tortured for pleasure. Doan had spent 6 years fighting them in tunnels and trenches across a dozen worlds. He had thought the war was over. He had been wrong. Doan burst into the reception hall. Chaos surrounded him. Valari nobles were running in every direction, trampling each other in their panic. Commander Thiessen was shouting orders that no one was following. Guards were trying to form defensive positions, but they were confused and unprepared. "Where is the princess?" Doan shouted. No one answered. No one was listening. He pushed through the crowd, searching for Alira's silver robes and proud face. She was not in the main hall. She was not with the other nobles. The chittering grew louder. Somewhere nearby, Valerie screamed and went silent. Doan ran. He moved through corridors that were filling with smoke and fire. He passed Valerie bodies, some dead, some dying. He did not stop. He could not help them. He had to find the princess. The translator in his ear picked up fragments of Valari communication, scattered reports, panic, and one message that made his blood go cold. The princess is trapped in Section 4. 3 hostiles approaching her position. Section 4 was 2 corridors away. Doan ran faster. He found them in a hallway that had been torn apart by explosions. 3 Kethra soldiers were advancing on Princess Alira. She was backed against a wall, her silver skin pale with terror, her purple eyes wide. She had never seen creatures like this before. She had never imagined that death could come wearing such a horrible face. The Kethra were enjoying themselves. They moved slowly, clicking and chittering, savoring her fear. One of them reached out with a serrated claw, preparing to grab her. Doan did not announce himself. He did not shout a warning. He simply attacked. The first Kethra died before it knew he was there. Doan's knife went through the soft spot at the base of its skull, and it dropped without a sound. The second turned, surprised, and Doan was already inside its guard. He grabbed its arm, twisted, and drove the knife up through its jaw and into its brain. The third Kethra was faster. It slashed at him with razor claws, cutting through his armor and into the flesh beneath. Doan felt pain, hot and sharp, but he did not stop. He caught the creature's arm, pulled it off balance, and cut its throat with one smooth motion. 8 seconds. 3 dead Kethra. Blue blood pooling on the floor, Duhan turned to the princess. She was staring at him like she had never seen him before. "Stay behind me, Your Highness," he said. She did not speak. She could not speak. She simply nodded. They moved through the ship together. Doan led the way, his knife ready, his senses alert for any sign of danger. The princess followed close behind, stepping over bodies and wreckage. They encountered more Kethra. 2 in the next corridor. 3 more near the main junction. A pair guarding the path to the secure chamber. Doan killed them all. He moved like something from a nightmare, fast and silent and absolutely deadly. The Kethra were fierce warriors, but they had never faced anything like this. They expected fear, hesitation, mercy. They found none of these things in the human soldier. By the time they reached the secure chamber, Doan had killed 10 Kethra raiders. His armor was torn in several places. Blood ran down his arm and dripped from his fingers, some of it blue, some of it red. He could feel damage inside his body, broken things that would need healing. He did not acknowledge the pain. He stood in front of the secure chamber doors, blocking any approach to the princess, and waited for reinforcements or death, whichever came first. The Valari reinforcements arrived 15 minutes later. Commander Thiessen led them, his face grim, his weapon drawn. He expected to find the princess dead or captured. Instead, he found her standing behind a human soldier covered in blood, surrounded by Kethra corpses. Thiessen stared at the scene. His purple eyes moved from body to body, counting the dead. His face went pale. By the ancient stars, he whispered. The reports were true. Minister Orvin arrived moments later. He looked at Doan, at the carnage surrounding him, and his old face showed no surprise at all. I tried to warn her, he said quietly to Thiessen. They are not soldiers. They are something else entirely. Medical teams rushed to treat the princess, but she pushed them away. She was not injured. She had not been touched. The human had made sure of that. She looked at Doan, who was finally allowing the medics to examine his wounds. She looked at the dead Kethra, their bodies broken and bleeding. She looked at the knife still clutched in his hand. The knife that had killed 10 enemies in less than 20 minutes, for the first time in her life. Princess Alira of the Velari Empire did not know what to say. The medics worked on Dohan for 3 hours. He had a broken rib, deep lacerations on his arm and torso, and internal bleeding that required surgery. The Velari physicians were disturbed by his wounds, but they were more disturbed by something else. He had kept fighting with these injuries. He had protected the princess while his body was failing. He had shown no sign of pain, no sign of weakness, nothing but cold efficiency and absolute determination. How is this possible? One physician asked another. He should have collapsed long before reaching the secure chamber. His body was shutting down. The other physician had no answer. In the recovery room, Doan slept. And somewhere nearby, Princess Alira sat in silence, trying to understand the creature she had mocked for 3 weeks, the creature who had just saved her life. Doan woke in the medical bay 3 days after the attack. His body ached, but the Velari medicine had done its work. The wounds were healing. The broken rib was mending. He would survive. He always survived. Sometimes he wondered if that was a blessing or a curse. A medical officer told him that the princess had requested his presence as soon as he was able to stand. Doan nodded, dressed in his repaired armor, made his way to her private chambers. The ship felt different now, quieter. The Velari. He passed in the corridors, looked at him differently than before. Some stared openly. Others looked away quickly, as if they were ashamed to meet his eyes. A few nodded at him with something that might have been respect, Commander. Thiessen was waiting outside the princess's chambers. The old guard looked at Doan for a long moment without speaking. I have commanded soldiers for 800 years, Thiessen said finally. I have fought in wars across the galaxy. I thought I understood combat. Paused. I was wrong. What you did in those corridors? I have never seen anything like it. Dohan said nothing. He waited. The Kethra feared throughout the galaxy, Thiessen continued. They have destroyed civilizations. They have broken armies. And you killed 10 of them with a knife while your body was failing. He shook his head slowly. What are you humans? What did your world create? Survivors, Doan said quietly. Our world created survivors. Thiessen stepped aside and opened the door to the princess's chambers. Princess Alira was standing by a large window that looked out at the stars. She was alone, without her usual crowd of attendants. She looked smaller, somehow younger. It's like the 19 years she actually was, instead of the ancient royalty she pretended to be. She turned when Doan entered. Her purple eyes were uncertain, confused. She had clearly been preparing words, practicing what she would say, but now that he was here, those words seemed to have abandoned her. Soldier, she began. I wanted to. I should. She stopped, frustrated with herself. Doan waited patiently. He had stood through much worse than awkward silences. You saved my life, Alira finally said. I owe you thanks. I owe you more than thanks. I owe you... ... double quotes. She trailed off again. You owe me nothing, Your Highness, Doan said. I was doing my duty, your duty, Lyra laughed bitterly. I treated you like an animal for 3 weeks. I mocked you, humiliated you, made your life miserable in every way I could imagine. And your duty was to die for me? My duty was to protect you. I did that, but why? Alira stepped closer, searching his face for answers. Why did you protect someone who treated you so badly? Why did you almost die for someone who called you a pet, a savage, a thing less than herself? Doan considered the question. Because protecting you was the right thing to do, Your Highness. Your opinion of me does not change what is right. Lyra stared at him, Something in her expression shifted, softened. She looked like she was about to say something important, something real, and then old habits took over, she said, her voice trying to find its old confidence. I suppose humans are useful, at least. When violence is needed, you perform admirably, like trained beasts responding to a threat. Words hung in the air. Du-hun went very still. Something changed in his eyes, something cold and final. Trained beasts, he repeated quietly. Alira realized her mistake immediately. Her face flushed silver. I did not mean, yes, Your Highness. You did? Do-hun reached up and began removing his armor. The movement was slow and deliberate. He unfastened his gauntlets first, sliding them off his hands and setting them on the floor. Then his forearm guards. Then his shoulder plates. What are you doing? Alira demanded. He did not answer. He continued removing pieces of armor, setting each one down with careful precision. Chest plate, back plate, leg guards. Each piece hit the floor with a soft thump that seemed very loud in the silent room. Stop this, Alira said. I command you to stop. Do-hun looked at her calmly and kept working. The belt, the utility pouches, the holster. Everything that marked him as a soldier. Everything that represented humanity's place in the Galactic Accord. He placed on the floor at her feet. Finally, he removed his helmet. Underneath, his face was tired and scarred and very human. He set the helmet down with the rest. You are right, Your Highness, he said. His voice was quiet but steady. I am useful for violence. That is all you see. That is all you want to see. I did not. This armor belongs to the Galactic Accord. It stays with you. It represents the treaty between your people and mine. Do-hun straightened, standing in simple clothes now, no insignia, no rank, nothing but a tired man with old scars. But I am not the armor. I am not a symbol or a tool or a trained beast. Alira's mouth opened, but no words came out. I am the man who fought in the Kethra trenches for 6 years, Do-hun continued. I am the man who held his dying friends and kept fighting because someone had to. I am the man who stood silently while you mocked me because I believed in this mission more than I believed in my own pride. He met her eyes directly, without bowing, without looking away. I have bled for your people. I have killed for your people. I almost died protecting you from creatures that would have torn you apart. And in return, you call me a beast. Alira's eyes were wet. Her hands were shaking. I am sorry. I did not understand. No, you did not want to understand. There is a difference. Do-hun stepped back from the pile of armor. Find another human to wear this armor, Your Highness. Someone with more patience than me. Someone willing to be your symbol, your tool, your pet. Returned toward the door. I am done, Alira said desperately. Please, I was wrong. I know I was wrong. Just let me let you what? Do-hun stopped, but did not turn around. Apologize. Say the right words, and make everything better. Your Highness, some things cannot be fixed with words. Some wounds do not heal because someone says they are sorry. He walked to the door. High Minister Orvin was standing in the hallway, watching. When Do-hun passed him, the old minister did something that no Valari noble had ever done for a human. He bowed. It was a deep bow, the kind reserved for equals and honored guests. Orvin held the position until Do-hun had passed. Showing respect with his body, because words were not enough, Do-hun nodded once, acknowledging the gesture, and continued walking. Behind him, Princess Alira stood surrounded by empty armor, finally understanding what she had lost, and somewhere in the depths of the ship, the young servant Nahon smiled. She had known all along. The humans were not. Beasts or pets or tools, they were something far more dangerous. They were people who knew their own worth. Princess Alira stood alone in her chambers. Staring at the armor on the floor, each piece seemed to accuse her. Each piece seemed to ask why she had been so cruel, so blind, so foolish. Commander Thiessen appeared in the doorway. His face was hard with anger. The human is heading to the shuttle bay. He is leaving the ship. Shall I stop him? He abandoned his post, He let him go. High Minister Orvin stepped past Thiessen, his old eyes fixed on his niece. He abandoned nothing. We drove him away. He is breaking the terms of the Galactic Accord, Thiessen insisted. This is desertion. This is the consequence of our actions. Irvin's voice was sharp. Do you think the Accord means anything if we treat our allies like slaves? Do you think humanity will continue to support us if we mock their soldiers and dismiss their sacrifices? Thiessen fell silent. Orvin approached his niece. Alira could not meet his eyes. She was still staring at the empty armor, at the helmet that had hidden a man she had never tried to understand. Do you know why humanity terrifies the Kethra? Orvin asked quietly. Alira shook her head. It is not their weapons. Other species have better weapons. It is not their ships. Their fleet is small compared to ours. It is not even their skill in combat, though that skill is considerable. Then what? Alira whispered. It is that they fight for things beyond survival. Orvin picked up the helmet from the floor and held it gently, like something precious. They fight for honor, for love, for principle. They will die for an idea, and they will walk away from everything if that idea is betrayed. Alira finally looked at her uncle. Tears were streaming down her silver face. What have I done? You treated a good man as less than a person. You took his service for granted. You mistook his patience for weakness and his silence for emptiness. Orvin set the helmet down carefully, and when he finally stood up for himself, you lost something valuable. Not just a soldier. A window into what humanity truly is. Alira wiped her eyes. Her mind was racing, remembering every cruel word, every dismissive gesture. Every moment she had enjoyed his suffering. She thought about how he had stood for hours without complaint, how he had endured her mockery without anger, how he had protected her with his body while his blood ran onto tea. He floored, and she thought about his face when she called him a beast, the cold finality in his eyes, the way he had removed his armor like he was removing chains. I have to stop him, she said suddenly. She ran through corridors and downstairs, past shocked servants and confused guards. She ran like she had never run before, her royal robes streaming behind her, her dignity forgotten. She reached the shuttle bay just in time. Doan was standing at the bottom of a transport ramp. He wore simple civilian clothes now, a bag over his shoulder, nothing to show that he was a soldier at all. He looked like any ordinary human, tired and ready to go home. Soldier Alira called out. He paused but did not turn around. Owen, she used his name for the first time. Please, wait. He turned slowly. His face showed nothing, no anger, no hope, nothing at all. Alira stopped a few feet away from him. She was breathing hard. Her face was wet with tears. She looked nothing like the proud princess who had mocked him 3 weeks ago. I do not know how to do this, she admitted. I have never apologized to anyone. I have never needed to. I am a princess. People apologize to me. And yet here you are, Doan said quietly. Here I am. Alira took a shaky breath. My people live for centuries. We see short-lived species and assume they cannot have depth. We think your brief lives make you less than us. Less intelligent, less valuable. Less real. Doan listened without speaking. I was wrong. The words came hard, like stones pulled from her throat. You are not less. You are concentrated. Everything we spread across centuries, you fit into decades. Your courage, your pain, your dignity, your ability to care about things that matter. She stepped closer, close enough to touch him if she dared. I watched you stand for hours without complaint. I watched you endure cruelty without breaking. I watched you kill 10 Kethra while your body was failing, just to protect someone who had treated you like dirt. Her voice cracked. I have lived for 19 years, and I have never met anyone with a fraction of your strength. Doan studied her face. That is a start, he said finally. Will you stay? Alira asked. I will do better. I will learn. I will know. The word was gentle, but firm. Your Highness, I have spent 3 weeks being treated as less than a person. I have been mocked, humiliated, and ignored. And yes, you are sorry now. Yes, you understand now. But understanding does not erase what happened. Alira's face fell. I need to go home, Doan continued. I need to be with my own people, in a place where I am valued for who I am, not just what I can do. He paused. Maybe someday, when your people truly understand what that armor means, what the humans who wear it have sacrificed, you can ask again. He turned and walked up the ramp at the top. He stopped and looked back. You asked me once if I had pride. I told you I'd choose where to spend it. A small, sad smile touched his face. I am spending it now, Your Highness, on myself. On walking away from someone who does not deserve my service. The ramp closed. The shuttle lifted off, and Princess Alira watched it disappear into the stars, carrying away the man she had only just begun to understand. 12 years passed, Princess. Alira became Queen Alira when her mother died. She ruled wisely, changed by that encounter in ways her people slowly came to recognize. She championed human rights in the Galactic Council. She fought against species discrimination. She made sure that no human serving in Valari space would ever be treated the way she had treated. Kong Du-hun, and on the anniversary of the attack that had changed her life, she unveiled a memorial. It stood in the central plaza of the Valari homeworld, where billions of her people would see it every day. It was a statue of a human soldier removing his armor. His head was unbowed. His face was calm. His hands were steady as they set aside the symbols of his service. The plaque at the base read, "He gave us his service. We failed to give him his dignity. Let this remind us. Honor is not worn. It is earned." The unveiling ceremony drew crowds from across the planet. Valari nobles and commoners stood together, looking up at the statue, reading the words that their queen had chosen, and in the back of the crowd, an older man watched quietly. Kang Do-an was 51 years old now. His hair was gray at the temples. His face had more lines than before, but his eyes were the same, calm and steady and full of quiet strength. He had not planned to come. He had built a new life on Earth, teaching young soldiers, sharing the lessons he had learned in the HFY War and beyond. But when he heard about the statue, about what it represented, he had felt something pull him back. Queen Alira finished her speech. The crowd applauded, and then, almost by accident, her eyes swept across the plaza and found him. She went still. 12 years of growth and change and ruling an empire fell away. For a moment she was 19 again, standing in her chambers, watching a tired soldier remove his armor and walk out of her life. Do-an held her gaze. Then, slowly he nodded. It was not forgiveness. Not exactly. But it was acknowledgement. Recognition that she had tried, that she had grown, that she had used her power to make things better. Queen Alira nodded back. Her eyes were bright with tears, but she was smiling. The crowd did not notice the exchange. They did not know that the man in the statue was standing among them, watching his own image cast in bronze. But somewhere in the galaxy, humanity's reputation grew, not just as warriors, not just as survivors, as people who knew their own worth. And that, in the end, was the most dangerous thing of all.